peace must be our goal and our guide. And all that we strive for as a human family, dignity and hope, progress and prosperity, depends on peace. But peace depends on us.
Good morning to you, and thank you so much for finding time to be with us this morning. It is the 12th of October 2021, a day that is very pivotal for the Republic of Kenya and indeed Somalia, where we are awaiting the ruling or the judgment from the International Court of Justice, and that will be a conversation at 11 a.m. and then later on we shall be streaming live from The Hague. But of course right now we get to go through the news-making headlines in the country as we look at the main headlines on the main newspapers here. My name is Miriam Ogutu, and it is a pleasure to have you in both. So before I get into the Star newspaper, the Standard newspaper and the Daily Nation, I'd like to bring us the latest, also some headlines from across the region. And I will start with some newspapers in Tanzania. And the main headline in the Daily News, the East African edition, Samia slams tribalism peddler. So that is what we have on the main headline. And I think the Kiswahili version of that, known as Habari Leo, Samia akemea ukabila. That is the main headline there. And then we go to the Citizen, which is also a newspaper from Tanzania. Now airlines fared amid COVID-19. How airlines fared amid COVID crisis. That is what we have there. And then Samia appointments based purely on merit. And then the Daily News, the Tanzanian version, fresh dialogue effort launched. We see there, no, that is for Zimbabwe, I believe. And then we do have the Chronicle, small herds can pay big. I don't know from which country that is, but also I think from Zimbabwe. And then we go to Uganda, and the main headline on Uganda's new vision, government commits 11 billion Ugandan shillings to community roads. I don't know how much that is when you translate it to Kenya shillings or perhaps the US dollars. And the Daily Monitor still from Uganda, cabinet memo on bail reforms leaks. And then the Guardian, that is from Nigeria, I believe. A federal government faces tough choices over likely naira devaluation. And the Punch also from Nigeria states lament deductions, demand probe, subsidy rises to 8.2 billion naira daily. So that is what we have in a few of some newspapers across the continent of Africa. So now let's just get back home, and we start with the Daily Nation. And the main headline on the Daily Nation this morning, 23 women in heated race to be governors. And then just up there, ruling on sea border row today, Kenya did not participate in case, citing biased court. The stories on page 10 and 11. And as I said there earlier, I will not look at it right now because that will form the basis of our conversation at 11 a.m. Schoolgirls invent a rapid COVID test kit. Innovation was presented at Science Exhibition. The stories on page 8 of the Daily Nation, and revealed how cartels ensure Kenyans pay dearly for cooking gas. The stories on the back page, and Joho fights for his survival. Politics. The stories on page 7, and Rift Valley tops in new voter registration. Mount Kenya trails. The stories on page 7. Remember, the IEBC is currently undertaking registration of new voters. So if you're out there and you're 18 years plus and you have your identity card and you're not registered as a voter, please, that is a very important role you have in this country, and deciding how you're being governed and how how your life is run in this country. That is the power you have to decide on your future. So go register as a voter on this. We have until earlier next month, and we are not sure if IEBC will carry out another registration process next year because IEBC has said it does not have enough funds. So take advantage if you're a Kenyan and you're not registered as a voter. Okay. All right. The Star newspaper, the main headline, Kenyatta Bastion trails Ruto's in-voter listing. In Kiambu, only 2,234 people were registered in first week. The story is on page 4-5. And I think a lot of politicians who have been eyeing Mount Kenya, quoting Mount Kenya, and of course planning to bank on the huge numerical strength from that region must be worried with this low registration. So hopefully we'll see how this will pan out in the next few weeks. A fake magistrate also impersonated CS Keter's younger brother, say police. The story is on page 2 of the Star newspaper. And then Kalonzo leads OKA's campaign in Ukambani backyard. The story is on page 8, whereas Trevor allies Jamal. Cops say he fled to Somalia, mother doubts. The story is on page 3. 21 governors in last term plot their post-2022 political survival kit. And the story is on page 6. Okay, and then we turn our attention now to the Standard newspaper. A fees reprieve for parents as schools reopen. And ministry acknowledges that many lost livelihoods because of the COVID-19 pandemic and are struggling to pay for tuition, pushes school heads to find different solutions instead of sending learners home over arrears. The story is on page 4 of the Standard newspaper. Service leave at the mercy of bandits. The story is on page 17. A state's team to push power reforms on page 32, and Kenya dominates Boston races. The story is on page 46. As war on terror shifts, KDF stays put. The story is on page 6 and 7. That is a special report on the Standard newspaper. Raila planned to avoid nomination fallout. The story is on page 12. So that is what we have on the front pages of the leading newspapers here in the country. So I'd like to bring in my panelists this morning. We're joined by Samuel Tawish, a journalist from Nairobi and a correspondent of Punchline Africa Television. Samuel, a very good morning to you.
Good morning to you, Miriam Ogutu. Good morning to Sharon Gitonga. And also good morning, of course, to Sean Daniel Wesonga and all our viewers who are watching this program in Kenya, Africa, and the rest of the world. My pleasure to join you on this program.
All right, nice to have you, and I hope you had a good rest. Yesterday we rested, and we also said bye. Very good. Sharon Gitonga. Sharon, good morning to you.
A very good morning to you, Miriam. Back at the headquarters, my colleague panelists Samuel Tawish and Daniel Wesonga, and to all our viewers watching us across the continent, it is a pleasure to be part of this morning show. Right. Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning, and nice to have you too, Sharon. And last but not least, we're joined by Daniel Wesonga, also a correspondent of Punchline Africa Television. Daniel Wesonga, very good morning to you.
Yes, a very good morning, Miriam Ogutu, at our headquarters in Nairobi. Good morning to my good brother, Tawish Olesasina, Sharon Gitonga, our viewers there in Kenya, Africa, and the rest of the continent. It is indeed a pleasure to join you from the CBD in Nairobi, Kenya. Good morning.
All right, good morning. And so we'll just start with what I think right now is important. Tunkara Mohammed, good morning to you, and thank you so much for joining. All right, so on the Star newspaper, the main headline, Kenyatta Bastion trails Ruto in voter listing. The story is on page 4 and 5 of the Star newspaper. So let's just see what the story is all about. President Uhuru Kenyatta's central backyard has reported the lowest turnout in the ongoing mass voter listing initiated by the IEBC last Monday. IEBC data shows that 7 counties from the region's 10 are among those with the lowest percentages of the new voter targets. At the same time, politicians appear to be moving voters from other regions, considering over 5,200 voter transfer requests IEBC received in the past 7 days. Whereas IEBC targets to list over 385,000 new voters in Kiambu, only 2,334 was reported in the first week, translating to 1%. What is really happening here, Samuel Tawish, or it's still too early? Kenyans, we love the last minute trash. Why do you think there seems to be some voter apathy there? Yeah.
Thank you so much, Miriam. Thank you for having me, and thank you as well for the question. Miriam, we must appreciate that the voter listing that was kicked off about a week ago was one which has been conducted during weekdays, and you understand that most of the people really who should have or who would have gone to register as voters, or rather to enlist as new voters, maybe are reporting to their places of work, and maybe there's not so much in terms of time for themselves, and also maybe the employers haven't quite given these particular potential, of course, voters time to go and register as voters. That could be one factor. Another factor, Miriam, could be really this is a clear indication or signal that there's some level of voter apathy in the country, even as we head into 2022 general election. The populace seem to be really hopeless and not having so much attention and keenness in as far as the coming election is concerned, because people are so much focused on how they're going to put food on the table. People are so much focused on how they're taking back their children to school. You understand, today they are reporting back to school after about 10 days holiday. In itself, Miriam, people seem to be so much preoccupied with what they think perhaps matters most to them, other than going to actually register as voters, because essentially they know going to register as a voter and going to vote, it's more of giving a job to the politicians, and it has really no direct connection to what to their lives, and more so how they're going to maybe to put food on their table. So these are some of the factors, perhaps I suppose, maybe negating the entire initiative of voter listing. Another factor, Miriam, also you understand in our culture, it's a tradition in Kenya, and I think in the rest of the African continent, that people like a last-minute rush. You're likely going to see maybe the last week or even the last day, you're going to have long queues of people going to actually register as voters. But be that as it may, I think the bottom line and what is very critical for us is to continually persuade and ask the people of Kenya, those who are eligible to go and register as voters, to first of all go and do that, because in itself is the only weapon or arsenal they will be having when we get into 2022 general election. They have been complaining about the high cost of living. They have been complaining about joblessness. They have been complaining about rampant corruption in the country. They have been complaining about bad leadership. And Miriam, like I usually say, they say there's an adage that bad leaders are elected by good people who do not vote. So how do you go and decide the person who is going to lead you or the kind of governance you want if you do not enlist as a voter and if you are not going to participate in this very critical exercise of voting? So I think people should be challenged to understand that there's a correlation between registering as a voter, going to vote, and the kind of leadership or the life we are going to have. Election in itself, Miriam, really determines the trajectory that our country takes. People must understand, much it is not an obligation in the Kenyan constitution, it is a responsibility that we go and enlist as voters and consequently go and vote when that election is due. This is very, very important. And I think more often we have also left this to the politicians. People have always been used to be given incentives for them to go and vote, enlist as voters. Sometimes you remember the radical measures that have been suggested or even proposed. Like, for example, I know it's watershed time. Maybe the spouses should deny conjugal rights to the others if they have not enlisted as voters. You remember during the last, I think was it in the run-up to 2013 or 2017 listing of voters, and also you've seen, for example, what is happening in most parts of Nyanza region, more so in Homa Bay County. People are denied to go fishing if you do not present your voter's card. In itself, I think we need to go to those extremes to whip people to go and register as voters. But as I finalize, Miriam, there's not so much in terms of tilting the scale as to which presidential candidate is going to get more votes, because maybe this region or that region hasn't quite read. Because we have the solid voters of those who participated in previous elections, almost 20 million of them. Even if you're not going to get additional 6 or even 1 million, still the 20 or less, 20 or thereabout will be casting their vote if they decide to do so. Let me submit for now. Thank you, Miriam.
All right, thank you so much. Indeed, Sharon Gitonga, a low voter turnout, registration of voters turnout, especially in regions like central Kenya that the IEBC had projected, there should be a high number of voters that are supposed to be, registering right now. So do you think this is a case of voters' apathy? And if yes, should the leaders, especially who are banking on the numerical power of voters in central Kenya, worry about what they might get in the next election?
Thank you very much, Miriam, for that question, and Tawish for your sentiments. And indeed, it is partly, voters' apathy, but also we also try. I also try to look at IEBC, whereby when they say failing to plan is planning to fail, and that is exactly what is coming up even as days goes by. But right now, I feel like IEBC is setting up the country for a big failure. Number one, when you look at from what they say, they do not have enough manpower and personnel. Also, they do not have they have very few kids to conduct this process of the voter registration, which I think we should start calling up the IEBC to make sure they have enough personnel and manpower to get the job done. And also the issue of extending time, if it's also possible. I do not see the logic behind having a registration that is carried out within 1 month. And if anything, this should be a continuous process, not just when we are headed towards the election. That is why now they are trying to do a job that should be done 4 years ago, and trying to compensate all the time that has been lost there. Because then another thing is on civic education. This boils down to the voters. During the weekend I had some conversation with the people, and I was asking them the reason as to why they're not going to vote, and most of the answers that came out is because even if they vote, the leaders are the same, and they do not see anything that is going to change. You see, that boils down to civic education, or not on educating them on what it means to vote, and not just that, but also how their vote is going to count in matters transforming the nation. Lastly, I was just seeing Simba Arati, the MP of Dagoretti, saying that people in Nyanza are going to be given sodas if you vote, just like what happens at when people donate blood. So I had Tawish talk about going to extreme, whereby maybe significant others are denied conjugal rights, but I feel like that will not really work. But also, when you look at youth, what is going to motivate them? Mm-hmm. If the issue of sodas and whatever can also be implemented in the counties, maybe, who knows? Because we are looking at youths who have really neglected the thing of casting up their votes ahead of the voter registration. Who knows? Maybe the motivation. That motivation is going to really encourage the youths, and they're going to come up in large numbers, I submit.
Okay, thank you so much. Very interesting points you've raised there, Sharon Gitonga. I think it's yesterday's watching the news, and one of the IEBC officials was speaking in Kisii, if I'm not very wrong, and he alluded to just what he just said. There are people who are waiting. They're being asked, have you registered as a voter? No. Why? I'm waiting to be paid. Sijapewa kitu. So that's why I haven't gone to. That is just sad. Like, Kenyans do not understand the power their voters card have, and then they fail to vote, and come back and complain later when you had a chance to put the person in place that perhaps would have led you in a different way, but you failed to do that. So perhaps the issue of civic education there, that could be one of the key, problems or contributors to the low voter registration that we see right now. And that is not just central Kenya. We've seen that play out in Samburu County. The target was 27,059. And so far, they've had 2,128, so it's just about 8%. In Mombasa County, the target was 190,237. So far, they've been able to achieve about 4,486. In Nairobi County, the target was 732,568. And there's what has been achieved so far is 16,151. So just about 2% of the voters that have been targeted in these regions and others across the country. Daniel Wesonga, what do you think is happening here?
Yes, thank you, Miriam Ogutu. And my fellow panelists have given an opinion which I really actually also relate to, in that they have talked about the lack of sensitization on the part of the IEBC and this baffling ignorance of the Kenyan voter. And I'll start where my brother Tarish left it, that if we do not register as voters, then in some way we actually are discriminating ourselves, and not only ourselves, but our future generations. The Kenyans have to understand that it is not about yourself. It is not about you as Miriam. It's not about you as Sharon, or maybe Tarish or Daniel. It is about your current generation and the future generations, because if bad leadership is elected into office and they go ahead to even alter the law in that the future generations are the masses of the few ruling class, then that will affect the generations to come. So to me, I think people who think that the politics of the day do not affect them, then I will only use the words of Mahatma Gandhi, that they are like a person who is drowning in water, and yet they claim that they have nothing to do with water. They have to understand that all these things actually will translate into laws, and laws will translate into economic setups that will actually affect them in their daily lives, no matter how they try to distance themselves from politics. So bottom line, people have to register, people have to cast their vote, people have to make their voices count at the ballot. Number two, Sharon has talked about a very, very important aspect of the IBC. And from where I sit, Miriam, I think IBC under Wafula Chebukati has manifested some kind of laxity, some kind of ineptitude, that only by having a proper leadership as the body will ensure that IBC is up to the task of ensuring that it does things with proper efficiency, and it ensures that it meets its target, not only by making sure that it registers 7 million or 6 million people as by its target, but also assure Kenyans that the forthcoming elections is going to be free and fair. But as it is right now, Miriam, that is far from being a reality, because Wafula Chebukati has not, where I live, I have not seen even IEBC officials in a caravan actually going around sensitizing the people about the need for them to be registered. I've not, while using my phone, met an ad on any social media platform calling on someone to go and register. I've not seen that even on TV, ad being run. It all depends with the momentum of how they will have begun this sensitization exercise. That will have translated to the number of people who will have been registered, even in the first week, But for IEBC, it is all laxity, it is all complaints, and all that kind of manner of things, Miriam. I think IEBC should pull up their socks. They should actually step up the sensitization, because this is what will actually translate into conversions. If people know the need for them to register, if people are aware of where they're supposed to register from, the centers where those kids are, then people will actually find it convenient to go and register themselves. Lastly, Miriam, I believe Kenyans, we are always last-minute people. So I think for the first day to have such low numbers, first week rather, to have such low numbers, it is something quite relatable. I believe with a little bit of effort and sensitization, we can always overcome that. But as it is, Miriam, I think it is a very sad state of affairs. And all those bodies, including IBC, which are responsible, and also the political class, instead of campaigning out there and trying to buy voters' confidence and dishing out money, they should channel that energy to ensuring that, first of all, these voters are registered as voters, because it does not do them any justice if they go out there selling the agenda to people who are not registered. It means at the end of the day, whatever matrix that was at play in 2017, 2013 is going to remain as such. Mm-hmm. So let them also go out there and preach the gospel of people getting their voters card. I submit.
All right. And I think you've all brought up the issue of a civic education, because we know during such an exercise we'll see a lot of advertisements on television, on the local FM stations, on the local vernacular stations, just to sensitize people, to encourage Kenyans to go register as voters. We've seen that in the past, and that has been effective in that regard. And so right now, of course, IEBC has been saying it does not have enough funds, and so we've seen there's been a bit of less manpower, as Sharon Gitonga has said, and a fewer kids, and perhaps, but even with that, IEBC registration centers are not overwhelmed because Kenyans are not showing in the numbers. So let's just go back to the issue of sensitizing the public and carrying out this civic education. Do you think maybe perhaps, okay, fine, IEBC has said it does not have the money to do that, perhaps to carry out such very important, awareness on our, media stations, but also could this be maybe IEBC is being reluctant in that regard, so that things don't happen the way they should be, and they come out and say, you know what, we told you don't have enough money, so now see how many people have been able to register so far. Do you think it's the laxity from IEBC? You think it's intentional, Samuel?
Well, Miriam, you may not say authoritatively that it is by design that IEBC is doing this or is not carrying out advertisements, especially in the media or through the media, to let people know that maybe there's this very critical exercise that is going on. So many people may view it as though IEBC is abdicating its responsibility of ensuring that they carry out public sensitization in as far as voter listing is concerned. But I think, Miriam, also we also have to own part of the blame as the people of Kenya, as the ordinary mwananchi. If you move around today, people will not tell you that they do not know that there's such an exercise which is going on, only that they have chosen perhaps not to go and register for maybe reasons well known to them, not because IEBC has not done so much of sensitization. I think, in as far as the sensitization maybe that we could be talking about, is to let the people understand why it is important for them to go and register as voters. Maybe on that part, I will say IEBC has let down the people of Kenya. People out here, just like you're saying, there are people who are waiting to be paid for them to go and register as voters. There are people who will even be waiting for them to be paid to go and cast their ballot come 2022 general election or any election that we'll be having. In itself, Miriam tells you that there's so much that needs to be done in terms of voter education for people to understand why it is important for them to go and enlist as voters in the first place. Because you'll want a better life, you'll want a change in terms of governance, you'll want your children to get better health care, or even yourself to get better education, or affordable for that matter. There are so many things that are correlated to governance that a voter really determines what kind of leadership they're going to get. So on this part, I would say to some extent, IEBC has failed. But even if we assume, we give them a benefit of doubt that they do not have these monies as they purport. Miriam, why don't they engage the stakeholders? Say, for example, the media. You want to tell me today if you invited the media to a stakeholders meeting and other, of course, players, and ask that maybe IEBC does not have enough money to carry out this campaign, what is it that the media can do to help IEBC? Because we are part and parcel of this nation. We are part and parcel of this critical exercise. We cannot even purport to be bystanders as the people of Kenya, or even as the media. It's very important. If it is about carrying a free campaign or a sensitization program upon which the people of Kenya will be sensitized or they will be empowered to go and register as voters, the media industry can come in. But I think it is because IEBC probably has not reached out to other stakeholders to see how we can be able to come in as media and help carry out this campaign. Even if it means volunteering, it does not necessarily mean, because the media houses can afford, say, 30 seconds, or maybe a maximum of 1 minute in a given day, or even in an hour, to carry out these campaigns freely. But because IEBC is rigid, IEBC is is actually giving this as a condition for them to be given money. That's why you see they're not carrying out this campaign. That is why you see they've even given a time limit, a time frame upon which people must register between now and the next 30 days. If people fail to go and register, then they'll be cut off. They will not be eligible to vote come next year's general election. So in itself, I think, Miriam, they are trying to, I would say it is more of putting the country, especially the exchequer, in a corner so that they can be given more money, so that more time can be, or maybe voter listing period can be extended. I think that is what basically IEBC is doing. In any case, voter listing, Miriam, for all eligible voters is an exercise that was supposed to be being carried out throughout. From the time we finished the previous election to this time, and even as we head into the general election. But you see, IEBC has not even been informing members of the public that you can go to the nearest IEBC offices and register as a voter as long as you are eligible, you have your national ID. So people understand that we only but have to register between now and the next 30 days, failure to which maybe you'll be locked out. So I mean, there's more that needs to be done in terms of sensitization.
All right.
So thank you, Miriam.
All right, very well, thank you so much. Now, IEBC targets to register 6 million new voters on the basis of the data by the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics 2019 census report. The Commission, in a statement on Monday, said it has hired voter mobilizers in the 290 constituencies to create awareness of the listing. But also, well, IEBC was speaking yesterday. The Commission noted that a lot of Kenyans were moving from their current polling stations, and they were seeking transfers. And the amount of people who are seeking transfers has raised a certain concern, to the IEBC. Why do you think people are seeking to go to new polling stations, Sharon Gitonga?
Thank you very much, Miriam, for that question. And maybe just to go back to from where Samuel Tawish has left on, and the question on IEBC, I believe it's not just about money, but there's a question of transparency and integrity. Because I always ask myself this question. I think they are given 5 billion every financial year, and apart from conducting by elections and of course, recurrent expenditures, that is, wages and salaries. There's also the mandate of carrying out sensitization and civic education on the importance of education. Where does this money go? And so I think it's not really so much on the issue of money, but also the question of the transparency and integrity. Because I remember, there's also you need to boost confidence to the voters. People seem to have lost so much confidence in IEBC, and unless they come out clean on such small nitty-gritties, then this could be a recipe of violence, if I may call it. So the issue, and then on the issue of sensitization, this trickles down to why people are reshuffling, because clearly I don't know, they just, it boils down to simple civic education. So less has been done and much more really needs to be done. And when I look at, the targeted 6 million voters, it's the big question is, it's not just about the 6 or 7 millions, but who are these voters? Majority, comprises of the youth. So clearly, so much needs to be done, including sensitization, and mostly in the digital platforms, because you find this is where you find more of the youths. Like Daniel talked about, less has been done, especially on social medias. When you open your platforms, you don't see so much being talked about. And I see, or even where I live, I've not seen any IEBC official. And when I look at campaigns like held, where they're campaigning for something like polio, they actually go door to door, calling out for children to be given polio vaccines. Why can't these also be, why can't they also follow trail of these and, pull up their socks and, put in more effort to sensitization and sensitization to people is concerned. Lastly, it is all, it's a plea to us as the youth, or rather the voters, for us to, take up the chance and take up the step, because if we want to see change, then we have to, start by taking in the voters. And if not that, then I think people will just, if we don't make sure that our votes count, then people will just take up their spaces and organize the government for them.
Okay.
I submit.
All right, thank you so much. And yesterday when I was watching that IEBC official speaking in Kisii, and he mentioned the issue of voters transferring from one polling station to the next. Apparently, the politicians there who intend to run in the next elections, persuading them, even though they come from maybe one ward, but they're persuaded to go register in a different ward, and they don't understand that the MCA from that other ward will not come work for you in this other ward. So the voters don't really understand the information like that. So they're persuaded maybe by being given something, money or whatever it is, to go register there. So that could be also one of the reasons why you've seen so many of these voters trying to transfer to other polling stations. But also, Daniel Wesonga, we see that 8 counties from Rift Valley and Northern Kenya have so far recorded the highest percentage as compared to previous electioneering years where we saw Mount Kenya leading in such an exercise. And this could be attributed to perhaps not having a clear candidate in Mount Kenya region who will be succeeding, President Uhuru Kenyatta. Could this be one of the reasons why we're seeing a low voter registration in Mount Kenya region?
Yes, thank you, Miriam. And first of all, let me begin with the issue of voters transferring their polling stations. I'll discuss this in twofold. First of all, we have to understand that COVID-19 has really disrupted the economic situation of so many Kenyans. And you find out that maybe someone who was in a city or maybe in a town somewhere, because of the harsh economic conditions, they have opted to move maybe into their rural homes, or maybe even just for the fear of the thought that maybe things might get out of hand economically. Then maybe they just transfer their vote to a place where they perceive to be their permanent resident if things fell out of hand. So that is one reason. But also another reason, I think IEBC has been a moribund organization over time. And when we had the new the new constitution, we thought that moving from ECK to IEBC will bring a new dawn to the people of Kenya. But as it seems, only the name changed, but the forest remained with the same monkeys. IEBC remained the same body as ECK, where it does not even educate its people on such basic issues like you articulated, Miriam, that if you vote in another ward and you stay in another one, this person you are going to vote for will not help you. And you, as you move from your ward to go to vote to a different ward, you leave the few people in your place who vote a wrong candidate on your behalf. And when you come back home after casting your vote in a diaspora ward, you get bad leadership in return. So those are the things that we should educate our people about, that let them vote where they will benefit from the leadership that they elect into office. Number two, going to the issue of the registration matrix in various regions, I must say that Central Kenya and Nyanza in particular, they have been having presidential candidates since 1992. So you realize with a presidential candidate coming from these particular regions, people have actually been registering en masse, especially in Mount Kenya region. And that is in 2007, since 2002, 2007, 2013 and 2017. Remember in 2002, we had Mwai Kibaki and Uhuru Kenyatta, who are very engaged in a competitive race. So that means that everyone in Mount Kenya, Uhuru Kenyatta vis-a-vis Mwai Kibaki, they had their supporters registering in high numbers. In 2007, we had Mwai Kibaki against Raila Odinga. Mount Kenya in support of Kibaki registered in high numbers, as well as Nyanza in support of Raila Odinga. In 2013, we had Raila Odinga against Uhuru Kenyatta. Of course, again, Mount Kenya and Nyanza registered in high numbers. In 2017, the same scenario repeated itself. So we had high numbers registering in Mount Kenya and Nyanza as well. So when it comes to now 2022 general election, you realize that Mount Kenya does not have any definite candidate, as you said. So statistically, that will actually translate to low registration numbers. And of course, that is because they don't have a presidential candidate of their own. Their interest is a bit lower as considered to other regions. When you look at Rift Valley, this is a region after Moi went out of power some more than 2 decades ago. This is a region that has not been having any clear presidential candidate. It has been playing at the second fiddle in presidential elections. So when you see them get excited about this particular election, that is due to the candidature of William Samoei Ruto. But when you look at it generally, I believe these other 2 regions that have been having presidential candidates year in, year out, they might have big numbers as even compared to Rift Valley. You know, at the end of the day, Rift Valley, as it is right now, has around 1.2 million voters. That is the Kalenjin Rift Valley. But when you look at Mount Kenya, 1.2 million voters, that is only for Kiambu County, a single county. or maybe 1.2 million voters. That is only for Kisumu County. So to me, I think, okay, they might be ahead, but cumulatively, still these other two major regions, that is the Mount Kenya and Nyanza, will actually come out as the strongest voting blocks in the election matrix. But nonetheless, Miriam, I believe as a country we should encourage people to emulate the pace that has been set by the Rift Valley voters. Let them also go out there and register as many number in their numbers, as many as possible, because at the end of the day, we must get each and every vote to count. So they should not just sit back and maybe watch as the others register and grow their numbers. I submit, Miriam.
All right. Thank you. And
Miriam,
go ahead.
Maybe if I could allude to what Wesonga has talked about, and then I could speak from, coming from the Mount Kenya region and having interacted with most of my relatives, and the reason as to why they're not going to, cast their votes. And I don't know how we can, solve these out is, very well in Mount Kenya, just like Daniel talked about. And there's an issue of having been in a political dilemma, if I could say, for the first time ever since independence, and not having a candidate, they can relate with is quite an influence towards the low turnout. I don't know if what we can do towards, killing the notion of because we've been having over and over a candidate that comes from the region. There's also that aspect that has really influenced highly to the low turnout of election. I don't know how we can go about that, because I feel that's quite a huge challenge.
Okay, it's called voters' apathy. When voters don't see the point of going out there to vote, sometimes they feel, okay, maybe the person I want is not there, or why should I even vote this time round? And we've seen that play out, especially in the backyard of where you come from, President Uhuru Kenyatta's backyard. So I agree with what you were saying. And so just moving forward, there also an issue of insecurity that we've seen engulf some parts of the country like Lamu, Laikipia, Baringo County, and yesterday very worrying news from Laikipia County, renewed attacks and conflict that left 3 people dead yesterday. So that is also an issue when it comes to insecurity. But there's an issue of Kenyans' last-minute nature. I think this is also the biggest problem, and I think Samuel Tabish, you tried there to explain there could be it's on a weekday, so Kenyans are going to work and there's no time to register, and people perhaps are focusing on getting the children back to school. As we know, the kids are getting back to school this week, and all that could be also the factor. But Kenyans' last-minute nature, this is something that we can't just ignore. And Chebukati cited the case of 2017, where Kenyans did not optimally utilize the early days to register, leading to a mad rush and long queues in the last days. Let us reverse this trend by shedding off the tag of last-minute Kenyan rush, the IEBC chairman said. Are Kenyans likely to reverse this very bad habit? Samuel Tawish, as we conclude.
Miriam, this is not something that is just going to fade off instantly. I think we need more sensitization. We need more education on the part of the public to get to understand why these exercises are very, very crucial for them. In fact, I was listening to Sharon and, of course, my brother Sean Wesonga alluded to the fact that probably the reason why not so many people in central Kenya are not excited to go and maybe register as voters, those who are eligible to vote or eligible to really register as voters. Miriam, I cannot quite link that that could be also one of the major reasons, because what would you say of Nyanza? Because they have a leading presidential candidate in the name of Raila Amolo Odinga. What will you say of Rift Valley, or more so the Kalenjin Nation, when you have William Ruto as the main, of course, a person who comes from that region and is contesting for presidency? What would you say of Ukambani? We have Kalonzo Musyoka, or Mudavadi in Western Kenya. So I think generally there are different reasons really why people feel like maybe we are not really going to participate in this particular exercise. But I also think, Miriam, If that will be the reason, assuming because my person or a person from my ethnicity will not be contesting for presidency, who knows, perhaps maybe someone will be nominated as a running mate from central Kenya. And that running mate will need a lot of votes really to come from his backing for him to be able to upscale whoever kind of person they will be running with in as far as 2022 general election is concerned. So it is important that people are continually whipped to go and register as voters. And after that, then we can embark on to continually encourage them also to go and cast their ballot come 2022. It's very, very important. Any vote really counts. Even a single vote really counts. You have seen in the past in history in Kenya and even worldwide, Miriam, people have been defeated by a paltry 100,000, sometimes 50,000 votes when it gets to presidential votes. You have seen that. And assuming maybe the 50,000 or 100 voters you are part of them and you could tilt maybe the results of that particular election, what would it have meant? So I think it's very important that people are reminded continually to go and register as voters and to avoid this last minute rush. Because even the gadgets we are using today are bound to go down, Miriam. So if everybody, assuming all the 6 million people decide to go, say in 2 days or in 1 day, and they want to register, that will in itself be impossible. But I'm very sure IEBC will eventually have to extend this deadline after the 30 days period. I submit, Miriam.
Okay, thank you so much. And quickly, Daniel Wesonga, if you were to go with the argument that Sharon has said that the people from her family, the people she knows and are close to her, they're saying the reason why they will not go register as voters is because there's no clear candidate coming from Mount Kenya. So that could be one part of why they're not going to register. So if that is the case, and a person like William Ruto has been very confident on having the votes from central Mount Kenya region. So if people in Mount Kenya region are still not very decided, owing to the fact that there's no clear candidate coming from that region, and yet the DP has been saying, I have that region under lock and key. Those are votes that have, he's been campaigning, so he's been very confident of getting at least majority of the votes there. So what, if this low voter turnout there and how perhaps Mount Kenyans are feeling, how should this translate to Deputy President William Ruto?
Yes, thank you, Miriam. And I don't want to say that the Deputy President has been all along been working on clay feet. William Ruto should be very, very worried by the low registration numbers in Central more than any other politician. Remember, for William Ruto to win the presidency, he needs to inherit 100% of what President Uhuru Kenyatta had in 2013 and in 2017. That means that our Mount Kenya region should come out and vote for William Ruto to the last man. That is a turnout of 100%. And all those 100% turnout go to William Ruto. The moment William Ruto loses 15 to 20% of that, then that means that he will be out of the succession matrix. And as it is right now, Miriam, I believe you've been seeing whatever has been happening in the mountain. His arch rival, the former Prime Minister Raila Odinga, has been steadily but surely been climbing Mount Kenya with the support of more than 5 governors in the Mount Kenya region. And this, I believe, is just the beginning, because they say a day in politics is a very, very long time. So all that summed up with the low registration numbers, then it means William Ruto is going to share these votes with Raila Odinga, maybe at a scale of 60 to 40%, or maybe even 70 to 30%. And that is still dangerous for him. And if you could add in maybe another candidate, maybe who will be vying from Mount Kenya, or maybe the One Kenya Alliance, which might take maybe, let's say, even 10 or 3%, that will spell a disaster for William Ruto. So to me, I think Mount Kenya should cease being his stronghold, as he was chest stamping, and he should actually concentrate on getting votes across the country and not only Mount Kenya. Because as it is right now, if votes were to the elections was to be held next year, and as things stand, then that should worry him so much, Miriam. I submit.
All right, thank you so much. Sharon, is there something you'd like to add quickly?
Oh, okay. Thank you very much, Miriam. And of course, with the conversations that we've been having, yeah. And my plea is going to be, in conclusion of this whole, is to urge, the youths to come out, in large numbers to vote, so that their vote can be counted. And if not, they keep on saying that we need to have youths aboard. But then, if we don't, cast our vote, how is it going to bring the change? So we all need to go out, vote, so that we don't have, people taking up our spaces and organizing the government for us. Right. I submit.
Okay, very well. Thank you so much. Thank you, Sharon Gitonga, Samuel Tawish, and Daniel Wesonga. We shall be back here, I think, just right now, so you don't go too far, as we look at, as I told you today, Kenya is holding its breath as we wait what the ICJ will be ruling on today. So Kenya-Somalia maritime border dispute, what could go wrong? And that conversation will be led by Dr. David Matanga. So don't go too far. We'll be back in a few. This has been Good Morning Africa. My name is Miriam Ogutu. Good morning.